James, thank you so much for joining us on the Geekcentric podcast. My name's Justin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, man. I'm playing Tears of the Kingdom again. I'm having the best time.
Oh,
Uh,
that's amazing. You get video gaming and is your vibe? You like gaming a
yeah,
lot?
I'm a gamer, total. And like I played Breath of the Wild. I just freaking loved it, and I loved it so much I just played it again right away. And I
Right.
got halfway into the second play. I was like, dude, you should have waited. You should have waited. So I played Tears of the Kingdom, and I haven't played it again. I was like saving it. I'm waiting
Oh,
till we forget most of the good stuff and then go back in. So like I'm over the moon.
well, that's great. We love gaming here at Geekcentric. We love movies, we love TV shows. I'm a huge fan of your work from especially the Buffy Vampire Slayer days. Spike was probably one of the coolest badass guys around that kind of I think shaped what a cool bad guy could look like for me at least when I was in high school growing up and stuff like that. But did you ever think though a character like Spike would have such an everlasting like impression on fans? Like he is still to this day talked about as one of the fondest memories amongst many things from Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Did you ever think that that would last as long as it did?
I was a Star Trek fan when I was growing up.
Yeah.
I'm old, so it was the original.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that show, and I knew the dialogue, I knew the story, and I still wanted to go back to that universe
Hmm.
because I think more than anything else, it was giving a message of hope for humanity that we
Hmm.
were going to graduate, we were going to stop trying to dominate each other and start trying to help each other. And what would happen if that happened? It would be great. Um, and I remember I just heard that people were watching reruns. Like the numbers for reruns were really high in the summertime. This is back when we were filming, and
Hmm.
people were saying they were tuning in because they when they first watched the first time they were missing half the jokes because they were laughing so hard at the previous joke, so they were tuning in to get the other jokes. And I remember thinking, oh my God, we might be building a world that is delightful enough or meaningful enough that people are going to want to come back again and again and again.
Hmm.
And I remember telling the other cast about that, and they weren't Star Trek. They didn't really clock it. But I remember one time saying to the cast, like, guys, we might be talking about this scene for the rest of our lives. Does anyone want a cup of coffee? And it was like 2:30 in the morning. They're just like, leave us alone. We're tired. But it was
But I love
true.
that I love that parallel though, like talking about like the influence that Star Trek has. And I think Buffy the Vampire Slayer has, it's had different iterations, but I think the one that with Sarah Michelle and the entire cast like yourself, that has very much hit a different nuance that has stayed with fans, which is why it's so great to see that you're traveling to different conventions and connecting with fans. Of course, I'm in Toronto, so you're going to be here in Toronto for Toronto Comic Con. What's it like connecting with fans at these events? Given the fact that you've referenced Star Trek and the influence that it's had, how do you feel when you now get to be kind of like almost get to treat you like you're their Kirk in some ways? You know what I mean? Or their Spock.
I can't believe it. Like
Yeah.
I was going to conventions dressed as Spock.
Yeah,
So
I
I
can
was
see
the
that.
one waiting for the autograph,
Yeah.
you know? And it just amazes me that I get to go to a convention and they give me a chair. Everyone else has to stand on concrete all day long, and I'm just sitting there and they give me free coffee. I mean, it's just too long. It's too good. And I love to talk with fans about what Buffy meant to them.
Mm,
Um, because I think that Buffy at the end of the day was giving voice to the truth, which is it's hard to be a human being.
hmm.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's hard for all of us, whether
Mm,
we're rich or poor or young or old or all of us. It's just hard.
yeah.
And Buffy really honestly gave space to that because
Hmm.
the writers were really writing about their own pain. They were writing about the day that they almost gave up, the day that they don't even like to talk about, the one that keeps them up at night. And they would slap fangs on top of that personal pain and tell the whole world. So it was just like these writers going, man, this sucked for me.
Right.
Is anyone had the same thing? So Buffy would like spend time on that one, and then it would say, and by the way, don't give up.
Hmm.
Like it's hard, we know it. It's hard for us too. It's hard for everybody, but don't give up. That's not the thing
Yeah.
to do. Keep going, man. It's worth it.
Yeah.
And that's a really useful thing to say.
Yeah. I feel like it helped shape my understanding of just like just high school and interactions. And obviously it was obviously super elevated in the sense of like you're dealing with vampires and demons, but also just this idea of like what do friends really look like and people that do look out for you, and how do you build that connection with people outside of obviously the fantastical elements. And like I was saying, you've played in a lot of sci-fi, and fantasy stuff, which is really great. One of my favorites was Lord Piccolo in Dragon Ball Evolution. When you got casted in that, man, I was like, that is perfect casting. It's definitely with the look and everything like that. You definitely pulled it off. But I wanted to know, like, you played heroes, you played villains, and everything in between. Do you find it? Which one do you find more fun in, like in terms of playing? Is it a hero or is it a villain? Or and
Villains, hand
yeah,
down, man. Villains. When you play a villain, you don't have to care about anybody.
sure,
I swear, once you start caring about anybody in life or in acting, it hurts.
yeah. Well,
It really does. Like
yeah.
when you play a hero, you're always running. They say
Hmm.
action, and you have to run. So for
Tom
12
Cruise.
hours a day, you're running around trying to save people. Everyone's complaining that you're not saving them fast enough. You're dredging up some childhood pain so that the story has weight. It's hard. And then
Yeah,
when you play a villain, you don't do any of that. You just lurk.
I
You're
know.
in the shadows, just kind of sat back, wait for the hero to come sweating by, and you leap out of the shadows, you pop them in the head, you go home. It's delicious. Yeah.
There's endless possibilities, and the line delivery that you always had with the accent was just always super cool. But I also think it was really interesting, and I think this is another reason why Spike has always stood out to me, is because he started out as a villain, but then at a certain point I was rooting for him. I was rooting for him to have like this sort of redemption arc, and when he started to kind of transition to that and he was finding his way to not just being a bad guy, it was really really interesting. And I think that's another piece of the whole element of what Buffy kind of teaches, is redemption and second chances and the opportunity to look at things differently and not necessarily understand them for just what they are. You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
So I think that that's what was really refreshing about your character and your approach to how you kind of evolved him, because I did read somewhere that it wasn't meant to be a very long, like a long run character, but because
No.
of fans, you stuck around. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was Drusilla's boy toy.
Yeah.
And I was Angel's first victim. He was
Right.
going to go evil after sleeping with Buffy, and he was going to kill
Hmm.
me off and be the big bad. And that was
Hmm.
the plan, and they kept me around. But
Wow.
I I liked that Spike was a tough guy and he was cool, but he was also vulnerable.
Yes,
And I
exactly.
I think that is just a good message to put out there. You can be all of those things as a man,
Hmm.
and you'll probably be a lot happier in life if you allow yourself to be vulnerable, which is something that too few of us, I think, do. It's getting
Hmm.
better, you know,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
we still have a little bit of ways to go, I think, as men to be comfortable with that.
Yes,
Um,
understanding representation and egos and all these different things that kind of influence that we like, that kind of are associated with, I guess, sort of maleisms, if you will, like just being a man. I think that there's some of that that kind of gets broken down in something like a Buffy show, where you are seeing again that sort of tough exterior, but then that vulnerability on the other side that really helps to make you understand. I think again that's another element to it all, as to what really stands out in my mind about your character. Now you're
yeah,
not just a TV star, a movie star, you are also a rock star, man. I did not know this, and I haven't listened to everything, but your band is called Ghost
yeah.
of a Robot, which is so cool. And it just, again, it feels very fitting for you because you've played in this sci-fi space. How do you find music influences you as a performer, as an actor? Like, is there a lot of parallels, or do you treat them differently?
Very differently. I guess music is a little closer to doing stage, where you have this really specific plan that you have to execute. And if you don't, it kind of falls apart. Film acting is really about submerging into a fantasy and doing something that you didn't plan on, something a bit messy, a little dirty, um, something that you're not aware of that you're doing. That's the best time.
Right.
Whereas with music, you know, you got to hit the note, man. And if you don't hit the note, it's wrong, and everyone can hear it. And like with one little tiny mistake, and it's just like it doesn't work.
Mhm.
So it's much more demanding on a technical level, and therefore terrifying for me.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I can
on
only imagine.
yeah, on stage, I've done like 100 plays. So like when something goes wrong or I make a mistake, it's almost like, oh, goody, now we get to deal with that, you know. But as a musician, I've gotten I'm all right actually. Like as a guitarist, this one really good professional guitarist, I was putting myself down once. And he's like, James, don't put yourself down, man. You're good. Like on a professional level, you're a pretty good guitarist. Like I'd play with you. I wouldn't brag about it, but I'd play with you, you know. And I was like, dude, I'll take it from
Right.
you. Oh my God, you know.
Yeah,
But I'm not at the level as a musician as that I am as an actor. So when I just go out, you know, when we're playing live, I'm just like, don't mess up,
for
constantly.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I guess there's like you were saying, like with stage and with acting, if something messes up, you can kind of improv your way out of it. Whereas like obviously when you're performing, it's a little bit harder, right? You might not hit that note and then it's very noticeable. So like you can kind of bounce back from that, but at the same time, it is kind of very obvious if something like that does happen. Whereas obviously in acting, you can shuffle out of that, right? Very
that's what they
quickly.
tell you on. Yeah, well, they tell you on stage, like, don't tell the audience you made a mistake. If you don't tell them, they don't know. It's
Right.
so true. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. If they feel like it's part of the show, then it worked, right? It totally worked. Listen, my time is up. I am extremely grateful for this opportunity, James. Like I said, I've been a huge fan, and Buffy was a huge part of my life, so I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Justin. I gave it everything I had, and I had a blast doing it.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you in Toronto for Toronto Comic Con.
You got it. You got it.
Awesome.